Rain slid down the glass like tired handwriting, erasing the shape of Gastown. The alley behind Water Street was slick and breathing, its bricks glistening as if the city itself had been washed raw. Somewhere above, the steam clock hissed for tourists who weren't there, and the neon sign of a closed cafe blinked its last pulse into the dark. Elena ran. Her heel hit a puddle that had been waiting. Pain ripped up her leg, sharp, hot, and she stumbled against a wall slick with moss. The laptop pressed to her chest felt suddenly heavy, a lump of wet metal that thudded against her ribs. Behind her, footsteps slapped water. 2 men in raincoats, hoods pulled, the soft thump of purpose under their stride. "Stop," one shouted. Not like a warning, but an instruction already bored of being ignored. Elena kept moving. Her breath fogged and broke apart. The alley narrowed ahead into a throat of light, leaking from a side door. She limped, half running, half falling, until she hit the dead end she hadn't seen. The metal gate chained and high. Her fingers slipped on the cold rungs. The sound of boots approached. Her chest, filled with the wild silence of someone realizing there's nowhere left to go. "Give it here, Elena." The taller one stepped forward, voice steady. "You don't want to make this harder." "Harder for who?" she said, but the words cracked on her tongue. She was shaking. Cold, adrenaline, the betrayal of her own ankle swelling fast. The smaller man adjusted his hood and glanced toward the street, impatience flicking like a lighter in his eyes. And then, out on the main road, headlights swept the wall, a low, throaty engine stuttering in the rain. The old truck turned into the alley entrance, tires hissing on wet brick. Its body was faded blue, the kind of color that once had pride. The driver slowed, instinct kicking in faster than thought. Malik Johnson, longshoreman on shift break, single father, watcher of corners most people ignored, saw the shapes before the story. A woman pinned in the dark, 2 men whose posture made the rain seem complicit. "Ba?" A small voice came from the passenger seat. Amara, 9, sleepy in her cat-eared raincoat, holding a thermos of cocoa. "What's happening? Stay in the truck, sweetheart." He killed the engine, the silence hitting hard. The truck's door groaned as he stepped out into the downpour. Malik wasn't tall, but he carried the kind of stillness that fills space. He walked toward the 3 figures, hands visible, palms loose, voice level. "Everything okay here?" The men hesitated, surprised by his calm. "Mind your business," the tall one said, tone shifting to something cautious. "Hard to do in my business drive straight into it." Malik stopped a few feet away, rain running off the brim of his jacket. He looked at Elena. Her face was pale under the streetlight, hair plastered to her cheeks, eyes somewhere between fight and collapse. "You hurt?" She shook her head automatically, then winced as she moved. Malik turned back to the men. "If she's hurt, maybe she needs a hospital, not a sidewalk." The smaller man laughed, the kind of laugh meant to check who's in charge. "You got no idea who you're stepping into." Malik's expression didn't change. "Maybe not, but I've got a kid watching, and I'm not letting her see someone get pushed around in the rain." That did it. The child, the eyes. The tall one's confidence cracked just a little, enough to reveal the equation shifting. No knife, no threat, no weapon but presence and decency. The 2 exchanged a glance, the kind that says this isn't worth headlines. "Walk away, man," the smaller one said. "Already planning to, Malik answered. "Once you do." They stepped back, one muttering, "You don't know what you just saved." Malik didn't respond. He just waited until their silhouettes dissolved into the curtain of rain, and the alley was left breathing again. Then he crouched beside Elena, who was still gripping the laptop as though it were oxygen. "You can let go," he said gently. Her voice trembled. "If I do, I might not get it back." "Then keep it close. But let me help you stand." She hesitated, then reached. His hand was warm despite the cold, steady despite the tremor that ran through her. He lifted her carefully, balancing her weight against him, adjusting so she could lean without shame. The smell of wet asphalt, cocoa, and rain mixed into something human. When they reached the truck, Amara had rolled down the window just enough to peer out. Is she okay? She will be, Malik said, helping Elena into the back seat. Seatbelt's there. We'll drive slow. Lena's ankle throbbed in rhythm with her heart. She tried to speak, but couldn't find the right place to start. Thank you felt too small. The truth felt too dangerous. Malik drove in silence, the wipers beating a slow, patient rhythm. The city outside blurred into smears of gold and gray. Vancouver turned watercolor. You don't need to take me far, Lana said finally. Just somewhere dry. I'll call a cab. Malik glanced at her in the mirror. You can't walk. Cabs won't take cash this late anyway. I can pay. It's not about that. He turned down a quieter street. You need rest. I've got a place in East Van. Safe enough for the night. I don't even know your name, she said, half warning. Malik, and that's Amara. I'm Elena. Good. Now we're not strangers, just people in the same rain. Amara twisted around in her seat. Do you like marshmallows? We still have some left. Elena blinked, caught between exhaustion and disbelief. You're offering me marshmallows? Amara shrugged. It helps when you fall. Malik smiled despite himself. She's right. It's a household remedy. The truck climbed out of the old brick streets and into the softer sprawl of East Vancouver. Small homes crouched under power lines, lights warm and patient. The rain followed them but lighter now, as if losing interest. Elena pressed her forehead to the cold window, watching the reflection of herself in the glass. A woman who had run, limped, lied, and somehow ended up in the passenger seat of an old pickup that smelled faintly of cocoa and sea salt. You didn't have to stop, she said quietly. Malik's fingers tapped the wheel once, a rhythm of thought. If I didn't, I'd have to explain that to my kid. Harder conversation. They stopped at a narrow 3-story building where the hallways always smelled faintly of detergent and damp wood. Malik helped her out, unlocking the door to a small apartment that felt lived in but cared for. A sofa, a low lamp, and on the wall, crayon galaxies and ferry boats signed Amara J. You can sit there, Malik said, nodding toward the couch. Don't worry, it's clean. My kid's the messy one. Amara gave a tiny protest from behind him. That's not true. Mostly true, he said, setting a kettle on the stove. Hot cocoa coming up. Elena sat, still holding the laptop, as though letting go of it might erase the proof she'd risked everything for. Malik brought over a small towel and a bag of frozen peas wrapped in cloth. For the swelling, he said, my mother used to say, frozen peas heal almost anything. She almost laughed, but didn't. He placed the makeshift pack on her ankle and crouched beside her. You're safe here, Hoots, he said, then added softly, at least for tonight. Something in his voice, simple, solid, broke the tension that had been living in her spine for weeks. She didn't ask how he knew she needed to hear it. She just nodded, the word safe echoing like a word from another life. Amara came over with 2 mugs, the marshmallows already melting into little white islands. Here, she said solemnly, one for you, one for the baby you might have in your computer. Malik blinked. The what now? I saw movies, Amara said, shrugging. When people run with computers, it's because there's a baby or a secret inside. Elena almost smiled. Something like that. Outside, the rain began to soften into mist. Inside, the room filled with the quiet hum of survival. Boiling water, radiator groaning, child humming softly to herself. Malik leaned back against the counter, eyes thoughtful. He didn't ask questions. He didn't need to. The night had already told him enough. Elena sipped the cocoa, felt its heat slide down, grounding her in a world that still had kindness. The old fears crouched nearby, but smaller now, less certain of their power. She looked at Amara, then at Malik, and felt the unfamiliar gravity of being seen without being hunted. You don't even know who I am, she said at last. Malik met her gaze, steady. Someone who needed help. That's enough for now. He reached to turn off the light above the sink. The apartment dimmed to a warm half-dark. the only glow from the street outside. For a long moment, they listened to the rain thinning into silence. Then Malik spoke again, quiet but firm. "Get some rest, Elena. We'll figure out the rest in the morning." His words hung there, simple, ordinary, but more profound than any promise. Safe for tonight. A reprieve. Not redemption, but a beginning all the same. And as the night folded over the city, the storm outside eased into memory. Gastown's alley emptied, leaving only footprints already filling with water. Inside that small East Van apartment, beneath drawings of fairies and paper suns, 3 lives had crossed, long enough for something new to take root. Something small, like trust, like hope, waiting for the next morning to decide whether it could stay. If this moment caught you, if you felt the pause where fear meets grace, stay close. Their story isn't done yet. The storm is just beginning to clear. Morning arrived gray and reluctant, as if the city itself hadn't decided whether to wake. The rain had eased to a whisper, clinging to the windows in trembling drops that refused to fall. Malik stood in the kitchen, half dressed for work, coffee cooling on the counter. The radio hummed from the shelf, its low voice threading through the smell of toast and damp wool. And in local news, Borealis Bioworks is under investigation following allegations of financial misconduct. Sources within the company claim that former research director Elena Novak, now missing, diverted R&D funds to private accounts. In a statement, Chief Operating Officer Victor Caldwell expressed his deep concern for patients and families affected by the scandal. A press conference is scheduled for 10 this morning. Malik froze mid-step, the words sticking to the air like static. From the sofa, Elena stirred, blinking awake. Her face was pale in the gray light, hair tangled from restless sleep. For a moment, she didn't understand why Malik was staring at her. Then the sound of her own name on the radio broke the spell. She pushed herself upright, heart hammering. "Turn it off!" He didn't. The broadcast continued, now accompanied by the rustle of papers, the tidy sound of official disappointment. Investigators have yet to locate Ms. Novak, whose disappearance coincides with the audit of several high-value research projects. Caldwell insists that Borealis remains committed to transparency. "Turn it off," she said again, sharper this time. Malik reached over and clicked the dial. Silence collapsed around them, heavy and close. Elena's hands were shaking. "They flipped it," she whispered. "He actually did it." "Who?" Malik asked quietly. "Caldwell. He's head of Borealis operations. He knows exactly what he's doing." She pressed her palms together, trying to steady herself. They needed a scapegoat, and I was the one person who wouldn't play along. Malik leaned on the counter, waiting, patient as rain. "The truth is," she began, then stopped. It was the kind of confession that changes everything. She swallowed, tried again. Borealis started running gene trials offshore, unregulated, secret. They were testing therapies in markets without oversight, rewriting the failure data so it looked clean. When I found out, I pulled the raw files, locked them in a secure vault. He frowned. "And that's what they're after?" She nodded slowly. "The fob. It's a biometric key. My heartbeat unlocks it. Without me, they can't touch the data. But if they get to me, if they make me open it, it's over. The truth vanishes." Malik exhaled through his nose, steadying himself, in that way men do when instinct tells them there's no safe direction left to step. Then the story they're telling now. Embezzlement, fraud. That's to make sure nobody listens when you speak. "Exactly," she said, voice trembling. "If I show my face now, they'll arrest me before I can show anyone the files, and no one will ever see what Borealis really did." From the hallway, the soft shuffle of small feet broke the tension. Amara appeared, clutching her stuffed seal, still half asleep. "Daddy, you forgot breakfast." Malik forced a smile. "We'll fix that, baby. Go brush your teeth first." She wandered off, humming to herself, the sound of a child unaware of storms, circling overhead. When she was gone, Malik looked at Elena. "So what now?" "I don't know," she admitted. "There's a journalist, Priya Deshmukh. She covers investigative science pieces for the Chronicle. If she saw the data, she'd know it was real. But I can't just send it from here. They'll trace the signal. He nodded once, absorbing the logistics like a mechanic reading a blueprint. Then we find her safely. No uploads, no Wi-Fi, nothing traceable. You'll get one clean window when it's ready. Elenas looked at him, startled by how calmly he said, "We." You don't even know what you're walking into. I know what it looks like when someone's hunted, he said. And I've seen too many people pretend it's not their problem. The kettle clicked. Steam rose, gentle and unbothered. Neither of them moved. Then Malik's phone buzzed across the counter, sharp and alien in the quiet. He picked it up. One new message, no name. The words glowed against the black screen. You're hiding a criminal. Think about your daughter. Malik's thumb hovered over the reply button, then stopped. He showed her the screen. Friends of yours? Elena's face drained of color. They found me already. He shook his head. Or they think they did. He turned the phone off completely and slid it into a drawer. We don't answer ghosts. She wanted to argue, but his steadiness was an anchor she didn't know she needed. You should let me go, she said. If they connect you, if they come here, they won't, he said. Not tonight. But by nightfall, even he didn't quite believe it. The storm returned after sundown. Wind against glass. Rain sharp as wire. Malik had pulled the curtains tight. Checked the locks twice. Elena sat on the couch, laptop closed beside her. Amara drawing at the table with crayons that left bright streaks of calm in the dim room. For a while the sounds were almost domestic. The kettle's hum, the scrape of pencil lead. Then Blue, the neighbor's retriever, barked once, loud. Then again. Malik froze. Blue never barked at rain. A faint metallic clink came from the hallway. A hinge, a tool. The sound of a door that didn't want to open but did. Elena, he whispered. Her eyes snapped up, alert instantly. Take Amara, he mouthed. She obeyed, without hesitation, crossing the room in 3 soundless steps, lifting the girl into her arms. The next sound was unmistakable. A boot against wood, low voices outside. Malik grabbed the wrench from the workbench by instinct. The door burst inward. A man in a tactical jacket filled the frame, flashlight beam slicing across the room. Police warrant, he barked, but the tone was wrong. Too aggressive, too rehearsed. Kellen Ward, Elena breathed. Her pulse spiked. She knew that face, Borealis security chief, the man who'd signed her clearance suspension. Stay where you are, Ward shouted. 2 others followed behind him, dressed for rain, not for arrests. Blue lunged from the hallway, big, golden, furious. He hit Ward's leg hard enough to stagger him. Chaos erupted. The flashlight spun. Amara screamed. Malik moved. Go, he shouted, blocking the path between the intruders and the women. The wrench swung, caught one man's forearm. The man cursed, dropped his light. In that instant, the room became confusion. Shadows, wet boots, the smell of dog and adrenaline. Elena clutched Amara tighter, grabbed the laptop, and ran for the back corridor. This way, she called. Malik followed, slamming the kitchen door behind him. They reached the narrow utility hallway. At the end, a rusted stairwell spiraled down toward the garbage chute. It's a dead end, she gasped. Not tonight. Malik shoved the maintenance door open with his shoulder, the metal groaning. Cold air and rain flooded in. Amara started to cry. Daddy, I'm scared. I know, baby. Hold on to me. He wrapped her in his jacket and led them down the slick metal stairs 2 at a time. Behind them, Ward's voice echoed, angry, close. Elena, don't make this worse. She didn't answer. The wind stole her breath. They hit the alley just as another door slammed above. The rain was relentless, battering the pavement into silver. Malik pulled her toward the truck parked half a block down. They'll shoot the tires, she panted. Then, we'll drive on rims. They climbed in, Malik behind the wheel, Elena and Amara in the back. The engine coughed, then roared to life. Headlights cut through the storm. Behind them, Ward appeared in the alley's mouth. shouting into a radio. A flash of movement, someone aiming, someone shouting. But Malik was already turning hard into the street. The tires screeched, throwing water high as wings. "Where are we going?" Elena shouted over the noise. "Northy into," he said. Across the bridge, the ironworkers' memorial bridge loomed ahead, black against the bruised sky. Traffic was light, only the ghosts of trucks and early semis. The rain turned from steady to furious as they hit the span. Malik's hands were locked on the wheel, jaw tight. Beside him, Amara clutched her seal, eyes huge. Through the passenger window, Elena saw the dark river below, gray steel and memory stretching into endless wet distance. "Why north?" she asked. "Gabe's shop in Squamish," he said. "Old friend, off the grid. No one will think to look there first." "You trust him?" Like gravity. She looked back toward the city, the skyline swallowed in fog, 1,000 stories, pretending not to see. "They'll paint us as fugitives now," Malik's voice was steady. "Then we make the truth louder than their lies." The truck thundered over the last arch of the bridge and onto the highway beyond, taillights bleeding into the rain. Behind them, Vancouver blurred into shadow and static. Ahead, the sea-to-sky highway wound upward into mist and forest, a road that led not to safety, but to the kind of silence where people could start over or disappear. Elena rested her hand on Amara's small shoulder. The girl was trembling, but awake, watching the raindrops race across the window like tiny meteors. Malik's reflection met hers in the glass, tired, soaked, unbreakable. "Thank you," she said, almost a whisper. He didn't answer right away. His eyes stayed on the road. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, almost drowned by the rain. "Don't thank me yet," he said. "This storm isn't over." Outside, lightning flashed over the mountains, illuminating the highway ahead, a twisting silver vein through the dark. The truck kept climbing, carrying 3 souls who had nothing left to lose, except each other, and the fragile truth pulsing inside a small, metal fob. Behind them, Vancouver's skyline faded into rain, and somewhere in the city, Victor Caldwell stepped up to a podium under bright lights, rehearsing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The cameras rolled, and another story began. The drive north felt endless, a gray ribbon through darker woods. The storm trailed them like something that hadn't made up its mind to let go. When the sea-to-sky highway finally unwound toward Squamish, the rain had turned to mist, the kind that clings to mountains and breathes down your neck. Malik's old truck groaned as it climbed, the last incline. To their right, the sea widened into Howe Sound, cold, pewter-colored, scattered with fishing boats that looked like pieces of forgotten time. To their left, the forest thickened until the trees felt close enough to listen. Gabe's workshop sat at the edge of the docks, half warehouse, half museum of rust. The faded sign, Harbor Repair and Salvage, hung crooked over a corrugated roof. When Malik cut the engine, the only sound left was the dripping of water and the soft tick of cooling metal. He turned to the back seat. "We're here." Elena stirred. Her neck ached from sleeping upright, her hand still resting on the laptop, as if afraid it would vanish. Amara blinked awake beside her, small and rumpled, the stuffed seal still tucked under her arm. "Where is here?" Elena asked. "Squamish," Malik said. "Old friend's place. Don't let the smell fool you. He's smarter than the building." The door of the workshop opened before they reached it. A tall man stepped out, beard graying, eyes sharp under a knit cap. He wore coveralls streaked with oil and the air of someone who had long ago traded bureaucracy for solitude. "About damn time," he said, his voice gravel and warmth. "June told me you'd call." "Didn't have a better option," Malik replied. "You never do," Gabe said, but his expression softened when he saw Amara. "Hey, little one, still drawing monsters?" "Just the nice ones," Amara said, serious as a scientist. "That's good. The world's full of mean ones already." He turned to Elena, offered a hand. "You must be the reason the government's awake tonight." Elena hesitated before taking it. That depends who you ask. Then we'll ask later. Gabe nodded toward the open bay door. Get inside before the mountains start talking. Inside, the air smelled of salt, oil, and metal warmed by age. A fishing trawler's hull sat in the center of the floor, half restored. Tools hung in careful chaos along the walls. Hooks, cables, propellers, coils of rope, each tagged with tape that had long lost its color. This place is off-grid, Gabe said. Solar batteries, backup diesel, signals a dead zone unless you know which line to wake up. He gestured to a small office at the corner, a windowless box lined with monitors and old radio gear. You can work in there, but fair warning, Borealis has ears. If they even sniff your IP, you'll have company before the next tide. Elenas nodded, already moving toward the desk. Malik followed, scanning the space automatically. Entry points, blind corners, exits. Years of quiet vigilance don't go away just because the walls are friendly. Gabe leaned against the frame, watching them with an expression that mixed curiosity and worry. You've dragged something heavy up here, Malik. June said trouble, but she didn't mention this kind of trouble. Malik met his eyes. You owe me from that dock fire, in 14. Damn, Gabe muttered. You remember everything. Occupational hazard. They shared a look that carried years of unspoken debt. Finally, Gabe sighed. Fine. I'll make sure no one follows the scent. When he was gone, Elena powered up the laptop. The screen's glow lit the small office like a confession. She inserted the fob, watched the biometric light blink once, then settled a steady green. The encrypted vault opened, rows of folders labeled with indecipherable strings. Malik stood behind her, arms crossed. What are you doing? Sending metadata, she said. Not the core files, just the timestamps, researcher IDs, and lab signatures. Enough for Priya to verify authenticity through her network. It's the first breadcrumb. And if they trace it, they'll find a dead relay in Romania that reroutes through a dozen decoy servers. The line dies the second it's delivered. Malik watched the progress bar crawl across the screen, slow as heartbeat. You built all this? Built it. Hid it. Hoped I'd never need it. Outside, the rain softened to mist. Amara's laughter drifted in from the dock, where Gabe was showing her how to skip stones into the water. For a few breaths, it sounded like an ordinary morning. When the upload finished, the message window blinked. Data received. Confirming integrity. Stay dark. Elena, closed the lid and let her shoulders drop. She's got it. Malik nodded. Relief edged with caution. Now we wait. They stepped out into the workshop again. Gabe was by the trawler, kneeling beside Amara, who was sketching something on a piece of scrap cardboard. 3 stick figures, standing under a crooked roof, rain falling around them. One tall, one small, one in between. The words, Boat Family, were scrawled underneath. Gabe grinned. Guess that's us, huh? Amara looked up. Just for now, she said wisely. Temporary family? Malik felt something tighten in his throat. A strange, fragile warmth that made the danger seem both heavier and worth it. Elena stood beside him, silent, watching the drawing like it was proof that a different life might still exist somewhere between storms. Inside, Gabe turned on the old wood stove, filling the air with the scent of burning cedar. He poured coffee into mismatched mugs. You're going to need a plan, he said. Hiding's not enough. They'll come looking, and not with lawyers. Malik set his mug down. I'm calling Cho. Gabe raised an eyebrow. You mean Harold Cho? Didn't he retire from the RCMP after that thing with the missing evidence vault? Exactly, Malik said. That's why I trust him. He's seen what happens when truth goes missing. Gabe gave a low whistle. June's boy, you still know how to find the right kind of wrong people. Malik stepped outside for a better signal. The sky above Squamish had started to clear, gray, lifting to reveal the first, pale hints of blue. He dialed a number that hadn't been used in years. The call connected on the second ring. Harold Cho. Still alive, old man? Malik asked. The voice on the other end paused. Malik Johnson. When June calls me about trouble, I listen. How deep are you this time? Deep enough that I need your quiet kind of help, Malik said. He explained quickly, Elena, Borealis, the files, the false charges. When he finished, there was silence on the line. Finally, Cho spoke. I've heard whispers about that company. Money moving offshore, trials gone dark. You've stepped into something federal. I didn't step, Malik said. I caught someone who was falling. A long exhale crackled through the receiver. I can't promise protection, but I can give you time. I'll flag your name off the active warrant list for 48 hours. After that, you vanish again. Understand? Understood. And Malik, don't let the girl see what comes next. The line clicked dead. Malik pocketed the phone and looked out over the harbor. The water glimmered with tired light. Mountains rising like old gods beyond it. When he went back inside, Gabe was explaining engine parts to Amara, who nodded as if memorizing sacred secrets. Elena sat near the stove, hands wrapped around her mug, the faint reflection of flame in her eyes. Cho bought us 48 hours, Malik said. After that, we're ghosts again. Elena looked up. 48 hours is enough for the truth to start breathing. Outside, the mist began to lift from the water, revealing the faint line of the horizon. The workshop smelled of salt and hope, and something quietly dangerous. For the first time since Vancouver, the silence around them didn't feel like hiding. It felt like waiting for a signal only they could hear. And somewhere, across encrypted servers and buried relays, a single journalist saw the first strand of data light up her screen. She leaned closer, heart racing, whispering to herself, "This is real." Back in Squamish, Amara held up her cardboard drawing. "Look," she said, showing it to Malik and Elena. "It's raining, but they're still smiling." Elena smiled faintly, her voice almost breaking. "Maybe that's how you know who's meant to survive." Malik rested a hand on her shoulder, steady and sure. "Then let's make sure we do." The stove crackled, the wind shifted, and for a brief, impossible moment, the world outside the safe house was quiet enough to believe in. Rain returned by dawn, softer this time, as if the sky itself had learned restraint. The safe house smelled of coffee and cedar smoke. Malik stood near the window, looking out at the gray horizon, while Elena scrolled through encrypted messages on her laptop. A new one blinked into view, short, stripped of formalities, urgent in its simplicity. Confirmed, data authentic. Meet at Granville Island Sunday, 10 a.m. She said. Ready, Elena said quietly. Priya verified everything. Malik nodded. That gives us tomorrow to move. Gabe looked up from the workbench, where he was repairing an old outboard motor. You sure that meeting's clean? Granville Island's crawling with people and cameras. That's the point, Malik said. Noise hides better than silence. Gabe frowned. Still, be smart. Borealis isn't sleeping. They've got money, reach, and friends who don't need uniforms to act official. Elena closed the laptop. I can't keep running forever. No, Malik said. But we can choose where the chase happens. By late morning, they were back on the sea to sky, the world around them washed in silver. The truck rumbled along wet asphalt, tires throwing mist into the air. Amara slept in the back seat, one hand curled around her stuffed seal. Feels too quiet, Malik murmured. That's what I'm afraid of, Elena replied. They entered Vancouver just as the city was shaking off the weekend fog. Granville Island was already alive. Vendors shouting, gulls swooping low over the docks, the air thick with coffee and fried dough. Malik parked near the far edge of the lot, backing in close to the wall. Stay close, he told Elena. Crowds can hide more than faces. They moved through the market's bustle, every sound amplified by adrenaline. Priya spotted them first. Small, sharp-eyed, a messenger bag slung across her chest. She gave a brief nod and led them toward the quieter corridor between the artisan shops. You weren't kidding, she said under her breath. This is bigger than what I imagined. You've seen the raw files? Elena asked. Cross-referenced every checksum. It's real. Trials in the Philippines, Argentina. Patients off the books. Outcomes scrubbed. Caldwell's name appears in 4 metadata chains. Elena's face tightened. Then we publish. Priya hesitated. I want to, but the data's too volatile for open release. It'll be challenged as fabricated, unless we pair it with official oversight. I have a contact in Health Canada who... She didn't finish. A flicker of motion in the crowd. A man holding a phone too steady for a selfie. Another loitering by the corner stall. Malik saw it first. We're not alone, he murmured. Elena followed his gaze. 2, maybe 3 tails. Not police. Too casual, too clean. Contractors. Priya's pulse jumped. How? Doesn't matter. Malik's voice was calm, clipped. Move. They turned down the next aisle. The sound of the market swelled. Tourists laughing. Music from a busker echoing off the tin roof. Malik guided them through a maze of stalls, weaving between displays of fruit and ceramics. Amara clung to Elinta's hand, eyes wide. Behind them, footsteps matched their rhythm. Split up, Malik said softly. Meet at the dock. No, Elena protested. We stay together. Trust me. He veered right, cutting through a vendor's tent, knocking over a stack of apples that rolled across the floor like marbles. The pursuer swore, skidding to avoid falling. Malik ducked under a hanging tarp, slipped behind a seafood counter, and emerged on the other side of the crowd. Elena, Priya, and Amara pushed toward the pier, blending into a stream of shoppers. The air smelled of salt and diesel. A ferry horn bellowed. Priya glanced back and saw one of the men closing in. Keep walking, she whispered. Don't run. But the man quickened his pace, hand sliding into his jacket. A vendor stepped into his path, calling out about smoked salmon. It bought them 3 seconds. Priya shoved the laptop drive into Elena's bag. If I don't make it... You will, Elena said fiercely. They reached the pier's end, where a crowd gathered, to feed seagulls. Malik appeared from the opposite side, motioning sharply. Boats this way. Before they could move, a commotion erupted behind them. One of Priya's assistants, the young man who'd been following remotely, had tried to intervene. The pursuers turned on him, one strike sending him to the ground. Not dead, but not moving either. Priya froze. Malik grabbed her arm. We can't help him now. Go! They sprinted for the boat. The dock swayed. The smell of gasoline and ocean in the air. Malik started the motor, his hands, sure despite the shaking in them. As the boat pulled away, shouts echoed across the water. From the shore, one of the men lifted a camera lens, not to shoot, but to watch. Elena's stomach turned. They're not giving up. No, Anichquat, Malik said. They've got a signal on us. He cut the engine halfway across the channel and crouched, feeling along the underside of the console. A faint, blinking light reflected off his palm, a small tracking tag no bigger than a coin. There you are, he muttered, prying it loose with a knife. He dropped it into the water. The light disappeared beneath the waves. Now they'll be following the tide. Priya sat hunched forward, wind tangling her hair. My partner's alive, she said, quietly. I saw him move before they pulled him out of sight. But this means we're out of time. Then we use what we have, Malik said. Elena nodded. We go to Cho. The meeting was held in a small office near Commercial Drive, tucked above a bakery that smelled of yeast and butter. The windows were papered over, the lights low. Harold Cho sat behind a desk, piled with case files, his reading glasses perched low on his nose. His hair had gone silver since Malik last saw him, but the voice was the same, measured, skeptical, kind. Show me, he said simply. Elena placed a printed summary on his desk, 40 pages of metadata and cross-referenced accounts. He read in silence, one finger tracing the columns. When he finished, he leaned back, studying them each in turn. This isn't just a leak, Cho said. It's a detonator. If we don't handle it right, it takes you down with them. Then we handle it right, Malik replied. Cho nodded slowly. We'll need 2 tracks, legal and public. I'll file under PIPEDA and Health Canada protocols. A federal data breach complaint. It forces a review without revealing your identities. At the same time, Priya launches a controlled media release. You feed her just enough verified detail to anchor the story. And the rest, Elena asked? Cho smiled faintly. Goes into escrow. He pulled a small drive from his drawer. We'll split the encryption, 3 parts, using Shamir's secret sharing. You, Malik, and Priya each hold 1 key fragment. If any one of you disappears, the other 2 can still rebuild the vault. It keeps everyone honest, and it keeps the truth alive. Elena exhaled slowly. That's brilliant. Old Cho corrected, but it works. He looked at Malik. You understand the risk? I do, Want, Malik said. We've been living in it. Priya tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Once we start, there's no going back. Caldwell will unleash every lawyer and fixer he has. Cho nodded. That's when you stop running and start playing by the rules they wrote, but better. Outside, traffic hummed, oblivious. The bakery downstairs released a gust of warm air and cinnamon every time someone opened the door. Inside the office, the world narrowed to 3 people, and a plan drawn in the shadow of power. Cho stood, extending his hand to Elena first, then Malik, then Priya. Once this begins, you're not fugitives anymore, he said. You're witnesses. Malik took his hand. Witnesses get silenced too. Not if we're loud enough, Cho replied. The light through the blinds striped the room, cutting across their faces in sharp bands of gold and gray. For a moment, none of them spoke. Then Elena opened her bag, removed the fob, and placed it on the desk between them. A small, cold heart of truth, waiting to beat. Cho slid it gently into an envelope marked Evidence, Chain of Custody. His voice softened. Let's make sure this time the evidence doesn't disappear. Outside, Vancouver moved on, unaware that in a cramped office above a bakery, the rules were quietly being rewritten. Rain returned that night with purpose, no longer gentle but deliberate, like the world itself had decided to test who still deserved to stand. Vancouver's skyline glowed faintly under the storm, glass towers breathing fog. Inside a derelict building off Powell Street, Malik, Elena, Harold Cho, and Priya huddled in a half-lit office that smelled of rust and old paper. The flicker of a dying bulb painted them in amber, ghost planning against giants. Cho had spread the documents across the table scarred by time. Priya's laptop glowed beside him, the article draft open on screen. Headlines, verified sources, references to corporate misconduct. It was almost ready, almost loud enough to shake something loose. Once I hit publish, Priya said, her fingers hovering above the keyboard. It's out for good. Mirror servers, offshore backups, and 1 release to every newsroom worth its ethics. Then do it, Malik said. Wait, Cho interjected, his tone steady but sharp. We should move first. Caldwell's network isn't guessing anymore. They know something's coming. Elena looked up, pale in the half-light. You think they found us? I don't think, Cho said. I know. At that moment, a faint hum passed through the room, a vibration in the walls that didn't belong to the rain. Malik froze, every muscle going still. Then came the subtle pop of distant static, radio chatter, muffled through concrete. Down, he hissed. The next sound was unmistakable. Boots on wet pavement, heavy, confident. Priya shut her laptop in a heartbeat. Cho's eyes flicked to the back door. They're sweeping the block. How? Elena whispered. They don't need warrants when they've got contractors, Cho said grimly. Malik moved first. He killed the lights, plunging them into the dim glow of the storm outside. We split, he said. Elena with me. Priya, take your drive. Move east through the corridor. Cho, I'll slow them down, Cho said, already reaching for the old revolver he kept in his coat pocket. Someone has to hold their attention. No, Elena started, but he cut her off with a look. Kid, I've played this game longer than you've been writing reports. You run, you publish, you finish what we started. Let an old man buy you a few minutes. The first crash came from the stairwell, metal striking metal. Malik grabbed Elena's wrist. Go now. They burst through the service door into a narrow hallway lined with peeling paint. Rain streamed through broken windows, wind howling like a warning. Footsteps echoed below, voices rising. Orders barked into radios. This way, Malik whispered, pulling her toward the fire escape. The metal ladder clanged under their weight as they descended, each step slick with rain. The city yawned below them, alleys glistening, streetlights bending in puddles. Halfway down, a shout tore through the night. A flashlight beam sliced across the wall. "Go hazard it!" Malik barked. Elena didn't hesitate. She leapt the last few rungs, hitting the ground hard, ankle screaming. Malik landed beside her, cushioning the impact with a grunt. They stumbled into the alley's mouth, just as a door above burst open, spilling light and rain. "Down there," a voice shouted. Bullets didn't follow, just footsteps, relentless. Malik pulled Elena behind a dumpster, heart hammering against the storm. He could hear the rhythm of pursuit, the hunt tightening. "Can you run? I can try." "Then we move on 3. He counted softly. 1, 2, 3. And they bolted. Rain blurred their path. Neon signs smeared color across the puddles. A delivery truck roared by, blocking sightlines just long enough for Malik to shove Elena toward an old iron gate. Through here, the gate led to a stairwell plunging into shadow. They half ran, half slid down the slick steps until they hit another exit, an old maintenance door hanging off its hinges. Malik kicked it open, and they spilled into another alley. The rain hit harder here, cold enough to sting. They stopped only when the street widened ahead, a single lamplight flickering over graffiti-streaked brick. Malik pressed her against the wall, catching his breath. "Where's Priya?" she gasped. "Already moving east," he said. "If she's smart, she'll head for the waterfront. Caldwell's men won't risk open crowds." "And Cho?" Malik looked up toward the direction they'd come. For a heartbeat, he said nothing. Then, faintly, the sound of shouting and a single gunshot echoed across the rain. Elena closed her eyes. "No." "He knew," Malik said softly. "He chose it." The gunfire faded. The storm filled the silence. Malik took her hand. "We keep going. That's how we make it count." They moved again, slower now, careful, the city shifting around them like a living maze. Malik guided her through side streets and underpasses until the roar of the port reached their ears. Ships loomed like dark mountains against the horizon. They found shelter in a shipping yard, ducking into an empty container stacked against the pier. Malik pulled the door shut, sealing out the wind. For a moment, only their breathing filled the space. Elena slumped against the metal wall, soaked and trembling. "He's buying us time," she whispered. Malik nodded. "Then we use it." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small flash drive, Cho's duplicate. "He gave me this just before the lights went out." Elena looked at the device, realization dawning. "He planned this. Of course he did." Malik's voice was low, reverent almost. Old cops never stopped playing chess. Outside, sirens wailed faintly, too far to tell friend from foe. Malik leaned back against the wall, exhaling slowly. "Amara's safe with June. That's what matters now." Elena looked at him, rain-dark hair clinging to her face. "She's all you have left, isn't she?" He hesitated, then nodded. "She's the reason I still walk toward fires." For a long while neither spoke. The sound of the storm pressed against the steel walls, like the heartbeat of something larger than both of them. Then Malik's phone buzzed once. A single coded message from an unknown number. He opened it. "Priya safe. Upload continues. Caldwell moving fast. Don't wait." Elena read over his shoulder. "She did it." "Not yet," Malik said, pocketing the phone. "But she's alive. That's enough to start again." He looked toward the door, where a thin line of light leaked through the gap. The rain outside had slowed, just slightly, the way it does before dawn. "We'll find another way to finish it," he said. "But for now we survive. For him." Elena nodded, eyes glistening, not from tears, but from resolve. Outside, thunder rolled far over the harbor, low and endless. In the distance, a single flash lit the skyline. Lightning caught on glass towers like a pulse of truth, trying to break through the dark. Malik closed his eyes for a moment, hearing Cho's voice in memory, steady, measured, unshakable. Let an old man buy you a few minutes, and as the rain began again, they knew that those minutes had to be enough to change everything. Mist held the north shore like a long breath. In Lynn Valley, the cedars towered, their bark wet and dark as old iron. Ferns curled along the trail edges. Water whispered through the gullies where rain never quite ended. The forest made its own weather, cool, green, and indifferent to cities and scandals. Malik led the way up a side path that only locals used, boots finding the flatter routes by habit. Elena followed, hood up, eyes flicking from the moss-slick rocks to the narrow sky between branches. They had left the container yard before dawn, crossed dim, quiet bridges and back streets, and climbed until the air thinned to the smell of sap and earth. A friend of Auntie June's kept a small caretaker's shed near the trailhead, a single room with a potbelly stove, a kettle, and a radio that only worked if you set it on the windowsill just so. It wasn't much, but the rain stayed outside and that made it wealth. Inside, Malik fed the stove with cedar offcuts and checked his phone. No pings, no obvious tales. Amara was still with June, snug in a neighborhood where the biggest threat was a nosy cat and the occasional power outage. That thought steadied him. In the corner, Elena unrolled a thin camping mat and lowered herself onto it, biting back a hiss from her ankle. The swelling had gone down, but the joint complained at every wrong angle. She rested the laptop on her knees and didn't open it. The forest hummed. Drip, hush, drip. A raven called once, dismissive. You should sleep, Malik said, pouring water into 2 enamel mugs. We'll move again after dark. I can't, Elena replied. Every time I close my eyes, the room on Powell Street is there, and the sound of that shot. He didn't argue with grief he couldn't fix. He stirred cocoa into 1 mug, instant coffee into the other, then handed her the cocoa, because he had learned which warmth did more work. We're close, he said quietly. Priya's message said upload continues. Cho's last move bought time. Elena looked down at the laptop. The fob hung at her chest like a small planet that kept shifting gravity. What if I'm the reason people get hurt, not just us? Anyone who touches this. You didn't make the harm, Malik said. You found
it. She nodded, not convinced. Silence stretched, full of what-ifs. Outside the window, the cloud lifted a finger's width, and a seam of pale daylight ran along the ridge. It didn't reach the shed. Last night, she said at last, when we were running, a part of me wanted to throw the laptop into the alley and end it. I keep wondering if deleting everything would be better, if erasing the proof would stop the danger. Malik didn't speak right away. He set his coffee on the windowsill where the radio usually sat, folded himself onto the floor across from her, and laced his fingers around his knee. The stove ticked. Sap popped in a gentle spark. If you delete it, he said, they win twice. First, because they keep doing what they did. Second, because they make you erase yourself to protect them. That's not what I mean. I know, he said softer. You're asking if peace is worth the truth. Most days, I want that kind of peace for my kids so badly, I could tear the world down for it. But if we make peace with a lie, Amara grows up in a place where men like Caldwell write the rules. And next time, the person running from them won't find my door. Elena held his gaze. The shed's dim light put hollows beneath his cheekbones, turned the lines at the corners of his eyes into small map marks. I hate that you're right, she whispered. Me too. He almost smiled. But I've been wrong before, and it cost more. She leaned her head back against the rough wood and closed her eyes. For a moment she let the forest sound through her. The way music you loved as a child can put a hand on your shoulder from 20 years away. When she opened them again, they were clearer, if no less afraid. What kept you from walking away? She asked. From me. From this? He thought about answering with a joke and let it pass. Auntie June? He said. She taught me that help is a muscle. You use it, or it atrophies. After the fire, people brought food, and then stopped calling. June didn't. She just kept showing up until showing up felt normal again. I learned the direction of that.
Elena's mouth twitched. And here I thought you were born brave. I'm not, he said. I just don't like bullies. And I like my kids' future more than I fear them. They let that sit. A band of light moved across the shed floor, slow as breath. Malik checked the door again. Twice. Old habits hung on for a reason. The radio caught a signal when he set it back on the sill. Static bruised the air, then a voice pushed through, clipped and local. A noon update from a station that still cared about traffic on the bridges and salmon counts. Health Canada sources declined comment on an ongoing inquiry related to Borealis Bioworks. In other news, Malik reached to switch it off. Elena put out a hand. Leave it. He let the voice continue, absent and ordinary. It was almost boring, and boredom felt like a gift. The announcer shifted to weather, then to a community bulletin, and then authorities confirmed the death of a technician formerly employed at Borealis Richmond facility. The coroner's report lists the death as self-inflicted. We are withholding the name pending next of kin, though online sources identified the deceased as Elena sat up straight so fast the mug sloshed. The name that followed was small in the world and large in hers. A young technician who once slipped her a printout after a night shift saying, I don't think this adds up. He'd asked her not to tell anyone he'd helped. She hadn't. It hadn't saved him. No, she said, breath gone. No, no. Malik froze. The announcer kept talking, hands clean of consequence. Elena stood, then sat because the room moved, pressing fingers to the bridge of her nose like that could hold the day together. He was 26, she said. He had a sister still in school. He liked terrible sci-fi movies and always brought extra tea bags to the break room. He wasn't on any list. He wasn't loud. He just asked a question. Malik's jaw set hard. The stove's fire hissed as a drop of wet fell from the stovepipe and turned to steam. Outside, the raven called again, almost like it was counting. This is how they warn us, he said. Quiet, official, and far away, so it looks like an accident you carry alone. Elena looked at the laptop, then at the fob, then out at the slope where the trees held the morning in place. Her hand steadied, not because fear left, but because something else arrived behind it, heavier and more precise. Delete it, she said to herself, and shook her head. That's what they want. They want this to end inside of us. She wiped her face with the heel of her hand. We can't bring him back. No, Malik said, but we can make it cost them to do this again. He reached over, palm up. After a second, she put the fob into his hand, and he closed his fingers around it, not to take it, but to show he could hold some of its weight. Listen, he said, we'll move at dusk. We go to ground near the Lynn Headwaters lot and cross to the other side of the creek. Fewer cameras, plenty of cars to rotate between. Priya will send a rendezvous. We'll keep our piece of the key. She keeps hers. If I'm grabbed, you run. If you're grabbed, I run. If we both are, then June will know what to do. Elena finished, a surprised laugh breaking through grief like light through fog. She'll probably scold us first. She will, Malik agreed. Then she'll fix the thing that needs fixing. He stood, stoked the stove. Fire deepened, settling into a glow that made the shed less provisional. Elena opened the laptop. The encrypted vault blinked awake. She wrote a note to Priya, short, clinical, with the kind of facts that survive arguments, and attached a subset of logs calibrated to trip regulatory thresholds without exposing patient names. The cursor hovered over send a long second, and then leapt. Done, she said. Malik exhaled. Good. Outside, wind found the tops of the trees and made a sound like surf. The mist shifted, showing a slice of blue between firs, then took it back. The day would not commit to clear. Elena closed the laptop and stood in the doorway. The forest smelled like rain remembering where to fall. Her ankle throbbed, a little less when she breathed with the creek. Say it, she murmured. Not sure to whom. What? Malik asked. The thing that turns running into standing. He joined her at the threshold, shoulder to shoulder, the shed a small promise behind them, the valley a long sentence ahead. We don't delete, he said. We don't break. We don't let them turn one truth into a cautionary tale. We carry it until it becomes a door. She nodded. And if it breaks us? Then we hold what matters while it happens, he said. And make sure someone else can keep going. The raven leapt from a cedar and slid into the fog, a dark comma in a white paragraph. The radio muttered something about traffic again, like the world insisted on continuing. Elena looked at Malik, at the fob, at the trail that vanished, and found itself a dozen times before reaching light. All right, she said. We keep going. Down in the city, a headline no one had planned on was already forming. Up here, in the damp air of Lynn Valley, 2 people made it a vow. Rain returned to Vancouver like a reckoning. It slid down glass towers, drummed on steel, and filled the harbor air with that salt metal scent the city never forgets. By morning, the world had turned gray again, dense, electric, waiting. In a cramped office on Commercial Drive, Harold Cho leaned over 2 phones, one hand on a legal pad filled with shorthand that only he could read. His voice was low, clipped, unflinching. Yes, I said federal jurisdiction, Health Canada, the RCMP's Digital Crimes Unit, and the Ethics Commission. Loop them all in. No, we don't need a press conference. We need subpoenas. He hung up, rubbed his temple, and looked at the laptop glowing beside him. A map of connections lit the screen. Names, shell corporations, payment trails that formed a spider web of greed. This is it, he muttered. The thread that unravels everything. Beside him, Priya typed. Her eyes red, but alive with purpose. Lines of her story filled the monitor. Dates, documents, embedded evidence. CBC and Global have their embargoes in place, she said. We go live in 20 minutes. My blog's set to mirror the data dump. Batch 1 only. Harold nodded. Just enough to prove it's real. Keep the rest in escrow until they confirm chain of custody. She hesitated. When this goes public, there's no way back. There never was, he said. We just stopped pretending there was a door. At 11 Twising a.m., the city's news cycle fractured. Screens across Canada lit up with the same headline. Whistleblower leak exposes Borealis scandal, human trials, offshore accounts, and federal complicity. CBC cut between anchors, and Priya's calm recorded narration. Global news followed with mirrored segments. Her blog's counter shot past 100,000 views in 10 minutes. Everywhere. Coffee shops, transit stations, boardrooms. People stopped mid-step, reading names they'd never known, but would soon remember. Elena watched from the safe house in Lynn Valley. The feed lagged over the weak signal, but the words still landed like thunder. Malik stood behind her, arms crossed, his reflection steady in the laptop's dull glow. Priya's voice came through the speaker, measured and sharp. Among the released materials are internal emails between Borealis executives and subsidiary labs overseas, discussing unauthorized gene therapies conducted on vulnerable patient populations. Payment logs confirm off-the-book transfers routed through Cayman and Luxembourg accounts, directly approved by CEO Victor Caldwell. Elena's throat tightened. The proof she had carried like a curse was now light and data, visible to anyone with a screen. Too late for them to bury it now, Malik said, but the storm of truth came with lightning of its own. Within the hour, Caldwell struck back. Downtown, at the glass atrium of Borealis headquarters, Victor Caldwell stood before a row of microphones, immaculate as ever in a dark coat that shed rain like oil. Cameras flashed. His tone was polished calm, the voice of a man trained to weaponize denial. These allegations, he said, are not only false, they are malicious. A coordinated smear campaign, orchestrated by a disgruntled former employee facing charges of fraud and data theft. Reporters shouted questions. Caldwell's jaw flexed once before he forced a smile. Ms. Monroe was terminated for cause months ago. Any fabricated documents distributed online are under investigation. We have full confidence that law enforcement will identify the source of this cybercrime. behind the podium. His security chief, Kellen Ward, scanned the crowd. Tall, expressionless, earpiece glinting in the gray light. In the back, a CBC producer whispered into her mic, "Priya, are you seeing this?" Priya, sitting in a cafe 3 blocks away with her laptop open, didn't answer right away. Her fingers danced across the keys. "Oh, I'm seeing it," she murmured, "and I'm about to answer." She hit publish again. Batch 2 went live. A trove of encrypted attachments now decrypted. Email chains, clinical test logs, and payment approvals bearing Caldwell's signature. Within seconds, social feeds exploded. Half the country called it proof. The other half called it fabrication. But the agencies, Health Canada, RCMP Cybercrime, Federal Ethics, finally moved from silence to motion. Servers were seized. Travel alerts issued. In a small cabin north of the city, Malik's phone buzzed once. A single message from Harold. "They're closing the exits. Caldwell won't wait to be arrested." That night, the harbor burned with light. Cole Harbor's surface shimmered under rain and neon, yachts bobbing like quiet conspirators. At the far dock, a sleek silver vessel throbbed with idle power, its engines primed for escape. Caldwell moved quickly, umbrella low, coat drawn tight. Kellen walked beside him, voice low through the earpiece. "Security grid's compromised. We need to go now." "How long until we're clear of the bay?" Caldwell asked. 15 minutes if we push." "Do it." They reached the gangway and stopped. A man stood at the far end, drenched, jacket hood pulled low. He held a thick mooring rope in one hand, looped tight around the dock cleat. Malik. Rain ran off his face, his breath visible in the cold. "You're not going anywhere, Vic." Caldwell blinked, recognition slicing through anger. "You're the janitor," he said. "The one with the girl." Malik didn't move. "She's safe. Can't say the same for you." Kellen stepped forward, hand near his weapon. "Back off, man. You don't know what you're—" Malik swung the mooring rope in a sharp arc. The metal clip struck Kellen's arm, sending the gun skidding into the rain. They collided hard. Boots slipping on the wet deck, fists trading sound for violence. The fight was close, clumsy, human. Caldwell shouted for the crew, but no one came. His own men had fled when the sirens started echoing from across the water. From the pier, flashing lights painted the rain red and blue. Police vehicles, RCMP, and Harold Cho, soaked to the bone, directing them forward. "Move in!" he barked. Kellen lunged, tackling Malik into the railing. Malik's shoulders slammed metal. Pain flared white, but he twisted, driving his elbow into Kellen's ribs. Both men went down. The rope caught underfoot, snapping taut, sending Caldwell stumbling backward toward the edge. "Stop!" Elena's voice cut through the storm. She was there, hood drawn, eyes burning. She'd followed the sirens from the ridge. Caldwell turned, breathing hard, slick hair clinging to his forehead. You ruined everything." "No," she said. "You did." Behind her, Priya appeared, camera still rolling under its plastic cover. "Don't bother with your speech," Elena said. "You don't control the story anymore." The last words were nearly drowned by the sirens. Officers swarmed the dock. Caldwell froze, as 2 RCMP agents closed in, one reading him his rights, while the other clasped steel around his wrists. The sound of the cuffs echoed louder than thunder. Kellen, gasping, met Malik's eyes from the deck. There was no hatred left, only exhaustion. Malik stood over him, dripping rain, chest heaving. Harold approached, umbrella useless at his side. "You all, right?" Malik nodded once, glancing at Elena, who stood with her back straight despite the storm. "Yeah," he said. "We're done." Elena turned toward the flashing lights reflecting off the harbor's surface. For the first time in months, the city didn't feel like a trap. It felt awake. Rain kept falling, washing oil into ripples of color that looked almost like sunrise. And somewhere behind the noise, Amara's voice echoed from memory. Soft, certain, childlike. Daddy says scared people can still be brave if they don't give up. Malik closed his eyes, letting the words fold into the storm. They hadn't given up, and that, in the city of rain and glass, was enough to begin again. Morning came soft and unhurried, the kind that only Vancouver knows after a storm. Light crawling through cloud, puddles still trembling, the air washed clean enough to taste. The headlines hit before breakfast. Borealis Bioworks, under federal investigation. Whistleblower, protections invoked. Health, Canada confirms suspension of all human gene. Trials pending review. Screens across cafes, train stations, and corner stores replayed the same footage. Caldwell in handcuffs at Cole Harbour. Eyes hollow beneath perfect hair. RCMP officers escorting Kellen Ward into a cruiser. Priya's voiceover threading the images into meaning. The city had found its story. But for those who had lived it, silence came first. By the time Malik woke, the rain had gentled to a mist that blurred the skyline beyond the kitchen window. The apartment in Strathcona was warm with the smell of garlic and broth. Auntie June at the stove, humming something old and unhurried. Amara sat at the table, crayons scattered, working on another drawing. This one of a lighthouse and 3 figures beneath it, hands raised to the light. You made us taller this time, Malik said, tying his robe. That's because we're heroes, she replied seriously. Heroes should be tall, June chuckled. Heroes also clean their dishes after breakfast. Malik grinned, leaned to kiss her cheek. The small routines, steam on the windows, toast cooling on the plate, felt almost unreal after weeks of running. The danger hadn't vanished, but the weight of it had shifted. A knock came at the door. When Malik opened it, Priya stood there, soaked to the elbows, holding a takeout bag, and her ever-present camera slung across her chest. You still don't own an umbrella, Malik said. Umbrellas make people look too sure of the weather, she said, stepping in. Mind if I join dinner early? You brought food, so your family, June declared. Amara peeked up. Did you put my picture on TV again? Not this one, Priya said, smiling. But I did bring something. She reached into her satchel and pulled out a framed print. The same drawing Amara had made at Gabe's workshop weeks ago. 3 figures under a crooked roof, rain falling around them. Beneath it, in crayon, boat family. Amara gasped. You kept it, Priya nodded. It's hanging in the newsroom now. We call it the Light Keepers. Reminds us what the story was really about. Malik blinked, caught off guard by the lump in his throat. June touched his arm gently. Let her have her pride, son. That child's drawn more truth than most adults ever say. They set the table together. 4 bowls, mismatched, but enough. The sound of spoons, the clink of dishes, the slow hum of life, restarting. Outside, the news kept turning. Health Canada announced a full audit of Borealis operations. The Federal Ethics Board confirmed subpoenas. The first patient families came forward to tell their stories. Some had tears, others had fury. Compensation hearings were already scheduled for the fall. Elena wasn't in the headlines that day. She sat in a quiet office on West Pender, a representative from the Whistleblower Protection Commission across the desk. Her case would take months, they said. But her name, once dragged through mud, was now linked to courage more than scandal. You won't get your peace overnight, the woman told her gently, but you'll get it. That's the law now, because of you. Elena nodded. She'd stopped expecting redemption to come in headlines. It came in smaller things. The text from Priya that read, safe dinner tonight, the message from Harold saying case proceeding, and the note from June, you've still got soup waiting. By evening, Strathcona hummed with the comfort of rain. The 4 of them sat at the small kitchen table, Malik, Amara, Juna, and Priya, sharing stew that steamed the air and laughter that came cautiously at first, then freer. Priya pulled out her camera. Mind if I take one last photo? Amara posed, with a spoon like a sword. Make sure you get the steam. It looks like magic. Priya clicked the shutter. Flash, laughter,
Silence after. Malik looked around the room, at the half-finished crayons, the scuffed table, the woman who had risked everything to tell the truth, the journalist who wouldn't stop digging, and the aunt who had never let kindness atrophy. He thought of Cho, whose grave now sat under rain in Burnaby, unmarked but not forgotten, of Gabe, who still sent short messages from Squamish, boats fixed, world still leaks, of the city outside, humming its endless lullaby of drizzle and light. Priya set the camera down. "They're going to make a documentary," she said quietly. "About Borealis, about all of it. I told them if they want a title, they should use Amara's words." June arched a brow. "And what are those words?" "Heroes should be tall," Priya said, smiling. Amara nodded solemnly, as though confirming an official fact. Malik laughed, a deep, unguarded sound that rolled out into the warm kitchen. The clock ticked past 8. Outside, the city glistened. Car lights, reflecting off puddles, windows breathing warmth into the wet streets. Somewhere in the distance, a bus hissed to a stop, doors sighing open and closed again. Life, resuming its rhythm. Elena arrived just before dessert, rain in her hair, coat still damp. June welcomed her without words, only a ladle of stew and a chair pulled close. "You made it," Malik said. "Still under review," Elena replied, a tired smile curving. "But I made it." Priya lifted her cup. "To making it." They clinked mugs, the sound small, but steady. For a long while, they ate and talked about nothing urgent. Amara's school project, June's old vinyl records, Gabe's ridiculous engine jokes. Outside, the rain didn't stop, but its sound had changed. Softer now, cleansing, not chasing. When dinner ended, Priya placed the framed drawing against the wall above the bookshelf. The crayons had bled slightly from moisture, colors running into each other like a watercolor of hope. Underneath, she had written in small script, "The light keepers, for those who carried truth through the storm." Amara leaned against Malik's arm. "Do you think the rain ever gets tired, Daddy?" He smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "Maybe. But even when it does, it keeps falling, because someone somewhere still needs it." Outside, the rain thickened, pattering gently on the tin awning, the glass, the pavement. It was no longer a warning or a pursuit. It was the sound of cleansing, of return. In Vancouver, it always rains, but tonight, for the first time in a long while, the rain sounded like forgiveness.